then it's like 111 outside. They're like dehydrated. I swear to God, I'm living in a simulation. Guru Nation, this one's gonna be amazing. The development of Yuma clinical trials, and wow, what a time to be alive. 9th, 2025, so it's about 4 years in, 4.5. And I got the numbers. And it's, yeah, and then we're getting to talk. But I gotta use the bathroom first because this was gonna be crazy. Like, subscribe, comment, share. That's the intro. Huh? Yeah. I'm gonna try to keep it under an hour, Guru Nation. But Chris Sabra has told me that repeated potential clients, because last 2 videos ago I did a pod on why now is the best time ever to be a site owner, and I really believe it. Actually, the views speak for itself. That thing is by far and away a 1 of 10 on these YouTubes. For those that are analytics nerds, you know what that means. For those that don't, it doesn't matter. It's just very popular. And so this one's related to that because, yes, it is the best time ever to be a site owner, but I think that's been the case for a while. And this episode is maybe a deep dive on like the details of how we did it, like exactly with Yuma clinical trials. Maybe it was meant to be, man, that we had to shoot it here, Daniel, because you got the logo behind us. We're at the Yuma clinical trials. We have like a hub and spoke model. So I moved to Yuma in July of 2021. So basically 4 years ago exactly, plus or minus a few days. And I've been here in Yuma for 4 years. Now our first study didn't come until December of 21. And for those watching, it's now July of 25. So we really only had like 3.5 years of revenue, of activity. And then really 21 was a wash because, yeah, I was here. I was trying to get studies, but I didn't really get my first site selection visit till like November and December. And then we got our startup fee. So I have the revenue in front of me. So 2021, I didn't even record. I don't think I recorded revenue. I'm actually pulling it up right now to see. So I use QuickBooks. For those wondering, we have a professional CPA that does our bookkeeping as well. But just for me, personally, to manage expenses, just so I know, I didn't even start recording revenue until 2022 because it made no sense. Like I was out here in 21, like I said, I moved to Yuma in July of 2021. And we got our first site selection visit around November. So that's how many months? July. That's like 5 months of me being here. We didn't have this office at the time. But I'll explain the story a bit. But me being in Yuma, 5 months, no employee. You can actually go on our YouTube channel on the playlist. And you'll see the early videos. Me and Jaime talking about just, all the startup talk, just figuring out what we're doing, how we're gonna do it. It's all on the playlist on my YouTube channel. So it's called Follow the Site Journey, and this will be on there, of course, too. But so really, like our revenue started in 2022 because in 2021. I don't even know if we got our startup payment from that study that we got selected for in December. So January 1st, 2022, we really was our first official like year. And that's when I started collecting financial information. So in that year, we got our first study, which actually sucked. Like this first study, other than the startup fee of $25,000. And what actually ended up happening, the sponsor gave us 2 of those studies. They had sister protocols, one for atopic dermatitis and one for plaque psoriasis. We got selected for both, and we gave those studies to my internal medicine PI, who's not a dermatologist, but he connected us to a dermatologist who then became our PI later. Since then, this dermatologist has moved back to Orange County. We might actually do a site with him out there soon. We're talking about it. But nothing went as planned. And I think that's the important thing to understand is when you're starting a site, you may think you have a plan. And like Mike Tyson says it best, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's what happened to us. Like we had this great PI, Dr. Smith, internal medicine, Yuma's busiest private practice. He's got about 8 providers underneath him. So we partnered with what I felt to be, and what is still the case, the best internal medicine company in all of Yuma. And we've been pretty successful with him, and we're starting a new wave of weight loss studies with him. But the first study we got for him was a dermatology study, like not really up his alley, but the sponsor was desperate and they selected us for both of those trials. And they were very difficult studies. These studies were not easy studies. These were studies where if I were to get those offered to me again 4 years later, I would turn them down. But at that time I said yes, because why did I say yes? First of all, I knew we could enroll, or at least we could give it the old college try of screening patients, which we ended up doing, despite them being almost impossible studies to recruit for. And it introduced us to a dermatologist who later became a PI for future studies of ours. So things kind of snowballed quickly, but these first 2 studies, we got a $25,000 startup fee from each one. So it was like a $50,000 startup fee, and it was me and Jaime who were the coordinators, and we still did not hire a coordinator yet. And what we did was, and we didn't pay rent to Dr. Smith. He was nice enough, and you can go look at the videos. You'll see us in our little office there within his private practice, where we documented the journey. That's what the playlist is called too on YouTube. And we were just there in the thick of it. No coordinator yet. We were pre-screening all the patients, myself and Jaime. We were building the investigational product cabinets by hand. We went to Lowe's and bought our first drug storage cabinet. And from there, we did try to screen. And in each protocol, we screened like 4 or 5 patients. Unfortunately, all of them screen failed. And we got paid for all those screen fails. So we made probably another, let's say that's 8 screen fails. We made another 16,000. So from those 2 studies, we made 50 plus 16, so around $65,000. Now, not exactly like a huge success, but it's enough to get started. And what that allowed us to do, that little revenue, it allowed us to hire our first coordinator. And simultaneously, we got offered our second study. And then our third study right after, and then we started getting like our 4th and 5th. And what we found out was we were in a prime location for doing research. Number 1, this is a very underserved community. Number 2, there was 0 competition, still is. And it's still a big enough city to where a sponsor, like it's not impossible to get to as far as monitoring visits. We are in between Phoenix and San Diego. So we're within a 2.5 hours of each driving distance. So we have a lot of our monitors come from Southern California or Phoenix. We also have nonstop flights to Phoenix, to Yuma, and also nonstop flights from Dallas to Yuma. So a lot of our monitors come from those places, Southern California, Phoenix, or Dallas. Now, so it's like not, the reason I bring that up, you need to be in a reasonably easy to access location for monitors. Doesn't have to be a huge city, doesn't have to be a tier 1, tier 2. You don't need an international airport, but you do need to be reasonably easy to get to. And I think we do check that box. Maybe barely, but we do. And then we make up for it with the patient population we have, very underserved. We're a border town. here on the border of Arizona, California, and Mexico. And we do have a pretty healthy ecosystem in this town of medical infrastructure. So we have like the vendors, we have like imaging vendors, we have surgery centers if we need it, we have sleep centers, and I'll get to some of those things because that's where some of the stuff gets exciting. But anyways, that first year where we had those two sister protocols that we just screen failed people, not because we didn't try, because I was the coordinator doing all the work, all the data entry. I did hire a part-time remote worker. Samantha Anderson was technically our first employee. She was our CRC Academy graduate, and she worked about 10 to 15 hours a week helping me enter data. And the fact that we used Creo for our eSource and our eReg, shout out to Creo, they sponsor this podcast. She doesn't have to be in Yuma to do the data entry or the regulatory filing. So she was really our first employee. But we hired our first real study coordinator that was physically in the office around April of 2022. And that was simultaneously happened with getting our third, fourth, and fifth studies launched. And those studies were where we were able to make our money. So that year, again, I moved here in July of 21, got our first study around December of 21. So in that 5 to 6 month period, we didn't make anything. Then we did get our first study. The important thing is we didn't have expenses either during that time. So the doctor let us use his office space for free. We didn't have any staff other than some part-time work here and there from Samantha Anderson. She also helped us to develop some of our systems that we still use today, as far as Creo workflows and things like that. So 2022 was our first real year of revenue. And that year, based on the two sister studies that were not very good and 3 more studies that were better, which some of those studies didn't really start till the fall of 22, we grossed, I'm looking at the QuickBooks now, $135,550.59. And we profited from that $90,000. So from the 135, we profited $90,000. What were some of the expenses? Some of the expenses were the Creo costs, the legal and accounting costs that we had, office supplies, which total office supplies that year was $1,100, so it's not a lot. Rent, we finally started paying rent to the doctor towards the tail end of 2022. $1,000 is what I have here. And then the coordinator. So we netted $90,668 off of $135,000. Pretty good profit margins. During that time period, I also hired our second coordinator. And so the first one came in April of 22. The next one came in June or July of 22, when we had more studies on the horizon. And I really never wanted to be in the trenches doing the work this time around, because this is like my 5th site. I knew what I wanted to do. I saw the opportunity being in this kind of location, and I wanted to scale it. And so this is what I was doing, training our 2 coordinators and building up the potential for us to go from 5 studies that year to maybe 7 the next year. And so the next year, which was 2023, I'm pulling it up right now. So from January of 2023 to December of 2023, we grossed $403,000. So we more than doubled our growth, our top line. We profited $286,000. So that year, the second really full year of us being in business, we took home $286,000 of our profit. Now, we didn't actually take it home. We always leave about 6 months of business expenses in the bank account. And we partner with our initial PI. So it's the owners of this site have always been me, Chris, as the CS, which is our company, Jaime, and Dr. Smith through his private practice. That's always been the ownership of YCT. Now, 2023 was interesting because it was the first time we started working with other physicians in the community besides Dr. Smith, who I mentioned is our internal medicine and one of our co-owners, and our dermatologist, who we created a smaller LLC with. And anything that was dermatology from that point forward would go to him. And we would use his office as well. So this is where we became a hub and spoke model. Wherever our PI had their private practice, and we only partner with PIs with private practices so far, wherever they have their private practice, we try to put their address on the 1572. So we have the option to use their office to do study procedures. It doesn't mean we're going to do it all the time, but it gives us the option to do that. We, in 2023, rented this space that we're sitting in right now. So, and we started out slowly here as well. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 suites here. We're probably going to get a 6th one sometime this year in this building, but the landlords have been really cool here. They're growing, like they're letting us grow at the speed we want to, and they've been very accommodating as far as letting us have other suites and connecting them and doing different things like that. So we didn't have to overextend ourselves, and I think the rent is pretty reasonably priced. And if you go to our website, Yuma Clinical Trials, you can see our video walkthrough of the site and all the suites, and actually all the other private practices that we have is included in that video. But by year 2, which is 2023, we had 4 employees at this point. So we not only did we double our revenue from year 1 to year 2, we doubled our revenue. From year 2 to year 3, we doubled our revenue. So we had 4 employees at all times. At one point we had 5, but one of them wanted to get a job with the Border Patrol, and she only stayed here like 2 weeks, which happens. But research, that might have happened anywhere, but in a town like Yuma, you're not really competing with other research locations because there aren't any, but you are competing with more stable companies like the Border Patrol or like the regional hospital here. So you do lose some people. You do get some transitioning type of people that really want like more stability. So we don't offer benefits for our staff, unfortunately, but we do pay really well for Yuma. I think maybe not the first 3 to 6 months, but certainly after that, we exponentially, if you grow with us as an employee, you're going to grow quicker. Like your salary you'll get significant salary increases. And it's a lot better than the majority of comparable jobs in Yuma. Sometimes even like twice as much if you stay long enough. But initially, it's not a lot more than other jobs. And so it kind of weeds out people that don't really want to be here from those that do. And I get it. People have bills to pay, and I get it. But it does help us kind of not risk a lot of money up front if somebody is just going to be here for a little bit and then go somewhere else. But then it rewards the people that end up staying longer, because yeah, we may not have benefits and things like that, but we have very flexible schedules for our staff. We accommodate almost whenever they want to do something with their family or take some time off. We even have paid time off. We have flex hours. You can work kind of whenever you are able to. So we have a lot of perks that other companies do not have in Yuma. But anyways, 2023, the year of 2023 was very good for us. We started enrolling in some arthritis studies Shout out to Robert Goldman, who gave us one of these arthritis studies back then. It was probably our first significant study where we actually had like real revenue. And it was probably the first study where we got that was like right up Dr. Smith's alley. And we were able to enroll a good amount of people and make some good money off of that study. We also had a diabetes study during that time. And we also had a rosacea study during that time. And we also had an atopic derm study during that time. And towards the tail end of 2023, like towards quarter 3, quarter 4, we made a partnership with a psychiatrist and neurologist, Dr. Alluri. And we were able to get him his first couple of studies, which we still have to this day. And we have since gotten him other studies. Psychiatrist and neurologist, very busy. CNS is always a busy area of research. And so we were able to diversify into other therapeutic areas as well. Now, that accounts for the jump in revenue and the jump in profit because we didn't really spend more. We spent more on like 2 more employees. We spent more on rent because we kept adding more suites. And instead of just having a free rent basically from our PIs, we needed the space because if you look around, like we actually have a room where it's just like boxes and lab kits. And then each PI's office is also like flooded with boxes and lab kits. So you do need a lot of tools, a lot of equipment. When I got here today, I got here towards the end of the day to film this podcast. 2 of my coordinators, Grecia and Lana, were leaving and they were going to the other site to look for an ECG. So there's things everywhere at all of our doctors' offices throughout town. And that's just a product of having like a lot of studies, and a lot of them, every one of them has like 15 to 20 vendors, which we discussed last time on the podcast with the tech people from Gleam, which pretty interested in working with them. So that's what happened in 2023. That was what was pretty significant. So we jumped. So again, to summarize, 2021, we didn't do anything, $0. 2022, we had, what did I say? We had 2022, we had 135,000 top line, so gross, and 90,000 of profit. 2023, we had 400. I'm pulling it up right now. In 2023, we had 403,000 gross and 286 profit. Now, 2024, we didn't add any staff. We had to replace 2 people with 2 more. So 2024, which was last year, was a really interesting year. And that we started getting private equity interested. And that's when I started really thinking, like, I knew we had a good opportunity here in Yuma, but when private equity was already talking to us, we knew it was going to be a special situation. So 2024, we grossed 888,000 with basically the same number of staff. And we profited from that 888,000, 593. So it was by far our best year ever. And in that year, what happened was, besides continuing to get studies for our internal medicine doc, which do come in waves, and this is the thing with having a lot of specialists, you will have busier times with each one. It's very rare that all of them are going to be busy at the same time. This is why it's important to have diversity in your capabilities, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But we did add in 2024 a respiratory, so a pulmonologist, and he's a sleep specialist as well. He's dual certified. And then towards the very last tail end of 24, we were able to get a cardiologist on board. And with each one, we opened a separate LLC. So any cardio studies that come, Yuma Clinical Trials owns 75% of it. The PI owns 25% of it. That's pretty much what we do with our PIs that want to partner with us as well. So Yuma Clinical Trials becomes like a holding company. Yuma Clinical Trials is the SOP. Yuma Clinical Trials is the staff and the tech stacks and the infrastructure. And it just for budgeting and getting paid is all these smaller LLCs. But last year, 2024, so our 2022 was our first year, 2023 was our second year, 2024 was our third year. Our revenue jumped to $888,000, and our profit was well over $500,000. Cardiologist on board towards the tail end. We didn't get any revenue from that. We didn't get any cardio revenue in 24, and we actually didn't even get any pulmonary revenue in 24 because or very little, like 25,000 maybe startup fees again. All of this came from our obesity studies and some of our CNS studies. Now, 25, which is this year, and we're only halfway through it. It's an interesting year because it is a bit of a take 2 steps forward and take 3 steps back kind of year. So we kept the same staff. All of our staff is super experienced now. Well, by super experienced, I mean the most senior one has 3 years of experience. The other ones have about 2. From January till July, so the first half of this year, we've only grossed $265,000. So we're only on pace to do, let's say, $600K. And that's because we were in startup mode for 2 of our new specialists, the respiratory specialist and the cardiologist. And we were also kind of in between studies for our bread and butter obesity, which we just got activated today for our next obesity study. And those are like kind of our bread and butter for our internal medicine doctor. And we have another obesity study that it's on a study-wide pause. The sponsor's trying to figure out if there's going to be an amendment or maybe even a need to do that study. But we've been on this weird like limbo in between studies. And I'm looking here on my board, and we have 2 studies for our cardiologist that we have not yet. Like, I just paid him his first check 2 weeks ago. So we haven't had significant revenue from him, but we've been screening and randomizing, so that'll catch up. And then we've been screening and randomizing for our respiratory guy. That's been catching up. We have potentially a few more respiratory and a few more cardio, and we have a hypertension one that's going to start hopefully in the fall. So this year, if I had to predict, last year we grossed $888,000. I think we're going to get to like 700. Maybe if we're lucky, we can get to 800 again. But I think we're going to do slightly less. And we're going to profit maybe somewhere just under $500,000 this year. But I do think next year, if we're positioning ourselves properly, and we are losing a coordinator, a pretty experienced coordinator this year, so we have to replace her. If we position ourselves properly, I think next year we should be able to gross well over $1 million with what I'm looking at on the board here, as well as some other stuff that I know are in the pipeline. I think we can do 1.2 to 1.5 next year, and I think we could probably profit like 750,000 next year. So really, like, the magic number where you want to profit is $1 million before like private equity really takes you seriously. Other site networks really take you seriously. But one of the things we've been playing with here is, why don't we just build the site network ourselves? So we have an opportunity about 20 miles from here, literally a stone's throw from the border from Mexico. There's a city called San Luis, Arizona, and we're thinking about starting a site there under Yuma Clinical Trials. And we got a green light from one of the physicians to use one of his providers, who's another MD, to start getting studies for him. And that investigator's spouse, so his wife, is a nephrologist in town. And she basically said, find me studies and I'll do it with you. So we're going to add a clone site 20 miles from here. And then we're going to add another specialist who, honestly, I've had a hard time finding her a study because it's such a niche area of research. There is also the potential to do oncology. There is an oncology group. There are 2 oncology groups. One of them I've been trying to work with. The other one is in another town that we can start doing oncology for. So I do think we're positioning ourselves for a pretty solid end of the second half of this year. Although it's not exactly like, it's not progressing linearly like I would like. We are having like a little dip. You know how when you buy a stock, it's kind of volatile, it'll dip. This is probably a little bit of a pullback, but as long as we finish the year strong, we're positioned next year to have our best year ever. And this year we're having our best year ever in terms of number of studies. But we're not having our best year ever as far as revenue is concerned because a lot of these studies haven't started yet and we haven't been able to randomize. Now, the partnerships with the doctors I've basically explained, they're either contractors where we give them 25% gross of the studies, or if they want to become partners, we make a small LLC with them. That way they get some of the upside if we ever do become a site network or join a site network and then get investors or join a bigger site network, they get some of the upside. So majority of our PIs want that option. Some of them move a little slower and say, let's start out as a contractor and see how things go. But I think we have like a blue ocean here in Yuma, blue ocean strategy, meaning not really any competitive forces in our way. Our only competition is really ourselves. Some of our staff learned the hard way, like we do need to put some focus on quality assurance and on some of this data entry timelines because some of these the sponsors are getting more demanding and they are wanting the data entered within 5 business days. And we are not exactly streamlined like some of the other sites where we have just someone that does regulatory and just someone that does data entry and just someone that does quality assurance. We just brought on our quality assurance person she does our QA remotely. And so we have a QA component now because we needed it and we're growing. I mean, these are the most studies we've ever gotten. The coordinators are really becoming generalists. We are looking for tools. That's why I was happy when the Gleam people came out last week and we got to talk about automating some of our workflows. I'm really happy that last year we partnered with Patient Ace. So Chris, who's my business partner with Yuma Clinical Trials as well as DSCS, we became co-owners of Patient Ace, and we're doing some really cool things with Patient Ace. Patient Ace has been very helpful for my site as far as recruitment. Patient Ace is starting to add some AI elements, especially when it comes to voice AI, which is going to become standard here pretty soon. And so Patient Ace has been a huge part of our tech stack. And also, I got to give a shout out to Creo, who is a sponsor of this podcast, and Inato, who is a sponsor of this podcast, because we've even been able to get some studies through Inato, which is what they do. They help experienced sites get studies for free, cost them nothing. So we've been able to get part of the reason why we have so many studies. We've had more studies this year than ever before in Yuma Clinical Trials history in year 4. And that's because partially due to Inato and partially due to some of our PIs becoming experienced and getting their names out there. And I don't want to brag because we're not like a perfect site. We do make mistakes. And if you ask some of our monitors, they'll tell you, yeah, they're a good site, but like they could do certain things better. I know we can. But we haven't had any major screw ups. Like we haven't had really any major deviation. We haven't had, thank God, any like critical safety issues. We haven't had any audits. I think if we did, we would come out okay. I mean, there's nothing like fraud or anything like that going on. And there's no negligence either. Like we have a team that actually pays attention. The PIs, the sub-Is, shout out to Jaime Valles because he he really looks at the lab results and all these things to always double, triple check. And now that we added a quality assurance component, we're doing those things well. Of course, we can do better, and we're looking for ways to improve ourselves. But I'm pretty happy with how we are. Again, it's not linear progression like this year, which is year 4. We are taking a little bit of a step back revenue-wise. Hopefully, it's just temporary. And when you look at the chart, if you think of it like a stock chart, it's just a slight retracement until it spikes up again to all-time highs, which I do expect for this time next year. So anyways, you could follow it on the playlist on YouTube channel. It's all about just going through the startup journey of the site. And we're still a startup because this is year 4. Year 5, I think we're going to start slowly evolving into a site network. But I know from Chris, some people wanted numbers, how long it took, exactly what you did. And this is nothing that's not achievable for anybody watching. Now, this is not my first site. So these numbers, and this is a pretty good location as far as competition is concerned. So results may vary, but the theme should be somewhat similar. And hopefully this is inspiration for somebody out there. Hopefully this is enough motivation to just keep going through the hard times, through the boring times, through the times where it doesn't seem like anything's happening. Believe me, I've been through those. Like the time where you're not seeing patients because you're in this weird space of being in between studies and the staff's kind of sitting around and you're questioning, why do I have so many staff? To then believing that, just trusting the process that you will get studies and that you will start enrolling patients. And that's kind of where we are now. And I think we're just going to continue doing it as well as continue to grow. I'm still the site director, but I'm looking to hand that role off to somebody at our site, somebody that will deserve it. I haven't made that official yet. I'm playing around with the idea because I do want to work on growing the business itself. Not so much working in the business, but working on the business. But now I'm in year 4, transitioning pretty soon into year 5. And that's kind of where my mentality and mindset is at. But this is very pragmatic. This is like a pragmatic way to achieve self-employment, really. And then if you want to build a business, you need people, you need systems, you need to start thinking about things like quality assurance, growth, both geographically and as far as therapeutic areas are concerned. And that's it. I got to actually jump on another call. I'm seeing it here. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, comment, share. We will keep doing this. It's not just on the podcast, on the YouTube channel. For documenting my clinic journey, check out that playlist on my YouTube channel. And you'll see it there. From day 1 when it was just a dream to as recent as this video and beyond. Like, subscribe, comment, share, Guru Nation. Let me know what you think. Bye-bye. Hey, if you guys like that kind of content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Stay tuned for more videos.